Welcome to the Women Inspired podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the Women Inspired podcast. As you can probably tell, there have been a few changes on the podcast, and I'm thrilled to talk with you a little bit about them before we get to this week's guest. So the podcast has been going for about a year, and it has just been one of the most incredible journeys that I've ever been on. And I'm thrilled to say that I have my very first sponsor. And actually, my sponsor is Modern Well. So Modern Well, if you remember, is a women-only co-working space in Minneapolis, Minnesota, run by Julie Burton. She was a recent guest on the podcast, and we just got to talking after that and realized that there was so much synergy in what we're trying to do that it just made sense for us to partner. I was so careful about ever taking on somebody to sponsor the podcast and ever partnering really closely with somebody because I wanted it to be a really natural fit, and this definitely was. So I'm thrilled to say that we have this amazing sponsor, and one episode per month, starting with this week's episode, will be devoted to one of the amazing women who is officing out of Modern Well. This week, you're going to meet your first Modern Well member. And like I said, one episode per month going forward will feature a woman who is officing here. And I can tell you from working here for a little over a month now, I mean, it's just incredible. It is absolutely teeming with amazing, inspiring women who are starting businesses and tackling gigantic goals. And you step into this space and you just feel empowered and celebrated and creative and supported and focused and all of the things that you want to feel when you walk into a workspace. So I really hope that you all will check out Modern Well. If you go to www.modernwell.co, not com, go to co. You can check it out for yourself, and stay tuned for future episodes of the podcast where we feature amazing women who office at Modern Well, such as this week's guest. Hey guys, welcome back to the Women Inspired podcast. I am your host, April Seifert, and I am sitting across from an amazing, amazing woman who has one of those really interesting careers that people tend to be extremely curious about, and she is in a topic area that is very near and dear to my heart. So I'm really excited to be interviewing her today. I'd love you to meet Lee Hersh. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here because, like many of my guests, you have an online presence, and I've stalked you online a little bit and done a little bit of that research and have gotten more and more excited as we've gone on and gotten this booked to chat with you today. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I would love for you to tell us a bit about yourself and help us get to know you.
Sure. So my name's Lee, and I like to tell people that I run a food and lifestyle website. It's called foodiefinds.com. And I'm a social media influencer. And so I'm based here in Minneapolis, and I have been running my website for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
It's been a long time. I started the blog when I was a junior at the University of Minnesota, and it actually started off called College Foodie Finds. So I was chatting all about how to live a healthy lifestyle when in college. And so it was very like diary based back then. So I was talking, like this is what I had for lunch. This is what I had for dinner. Like this was my workout. And over the past 8 years, it's just completely evolved into like this content based website with this massive, amazing following. And I love every second of it.
Okay. So that's incredible when you think about where you started. So going back to those days at the University of Minnesota, I'm thinking back to myself and my sort of well-being journey when I was in college. There were some serious ups and downs. I mean, like, oh God. So I really wish I would have had your website back then because I probably made some of the mistakes that a lot of us make. But what was it that made you initially want to start the blog? And did you at all have in mind that this was going to be like the thing that you do?
Yeah. So the cool part about what I'm doing now is that it actually started off as a passion project. And just because I loved reading healthy living blogs and getting inspiration, I have an obsessive past with health and fitness. And so that's sort of what stemmed me starting the blog, was to be able to like channel that energy into something. At the time I did have an eating disorder, lots of depression, anxiety. College was a really tough time for me. And so it was a big part of my recovery, just channeling that obsessive energy towards a website, I guess, instead of obsessing over my body. So it definitely helped me get through that and beyond. I mean, it's amazing that I'm doing this full time. Like I said, I started it just because it was fun. I was able to mix my passion for food and exercise and design all into one website. And I have the best job in the world.
I would agree that it's a pretty dang good job. What were you majoring in at the time?
So I switched my major like 45 times, and I love that. Ended up majoring in individualized studies. So I basically got like 3 minors and called it a major. So it was design, Spanish, and public health.
Got it. So somewhat it relates, the Spanish part. I don't know if maybe you have Spanish on your site. I'm not sure. But.
Not really, but I had enough credits to add that in.
Right. Yeah. It somewhat relates. Yeah. Okay. That makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
This is so interesting that so many times the best laid plans, right? We all sit and try to plan out what our career is going to be, or what's your 5-year plan, or what's your whatever. And it's so interesting when some of the coolest things come from a place where you're just passionate about it and you do it because you love it. Or in your case, you're doing it as part of a recovery from a pretty, heavy situation.
Yep.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about that. So, what was it about it that helped in that vein? Like, what was it about it that helped you recover, and how did that become something that you were so passionate about and so helpful?
Yeah. So I've always struggled with like self body image and feeling like I'm enough. I have an amazing family. So I'm not really sure where it all stemmed from, but honestly, I feel like a lot has to do with when I was in high school. That's when Instant Messenger was introduced. That's when texting started being a thing. Bullying started becoming cyber, and you just sort of like shrivel in your shell. And so the blog, I think, really helped me realize that I was suffering from something.
Interesting.
I felt like I was a little bit in denial that I had a problem. And then once I started creating this amazing content and people were like, oh, what's the recipe for that? And I was like, oh, a 5th cup of oats. Like, that's not healthy. So I think it really helped me take a step back and be like, okay, what is a healthy diet? And then I was able to sort of like conquer my issues at the same time.
Were you able to do that on your own? I mean, that's incredibly self-reflective. That is amazingly self-reflective.
I definitely did not do it on my own. I have amazing friends, Lindley, actually, who works with Foodie Finds full-time now. She was there from the beginning. My sister and my mom were the ones that really helped me kind of come full circle. And then I did get help from a doctor and medication and just lifestyle change in general, including yoga, and lots of other meditative practices that I did to get through it.
Yeah. It's such a common situation that so many people experience. Actually, very recently, I shared my experience with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and this weird PTSD-like thing that arose out of it that at the time I couldn't even recognize. And so it's really amazing when people can be so, I guess, open about the experience that they've had. And I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Think, after 5 years, I think I'm able to like take a step back and say, wow, I'm in a really good place right now. And like you said, when you're in it, you just have no idea.
No.
You're like, you do everything you can to tell yourself this is normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mind, I like to say that our mind can be our most amazing, powerful asset, and it can also be our worst enemy. If left unchecked, it can do some seriously crazy things to us. Yep. So that just like describes the power of the mind. So it's like you can push it in one direction or the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Luckily we're going in, the other direction. So that's great. Talk a little bit about when the tide started to turn. Like at some point, people started reaching out to you. At some point you started to realize, this is becoming a thing and this might be a thing that I can do.
Yeah.
When did that start to happen?
Business-wise?
Yeah, business-wise.
Man, I think the day that I realized, like, I wonder if this could be a business is when two of the bloggers that I was following online, Peanut Butter Fingers and Carrots and Cake, they were, like, quitting their jobs and running their blogs full-time. And at the time, I was like, how are they even doing this? Like, how are they making money? I just don't understand. And so that's when I sort of put together a strategy, started asking questions, and was like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to make it happen no matter what.
Did you have a business background at all?
Not at all.
Entrepreneurs in your family, nothing like that?
No. I was working at Anytime Fitness headquarters, so I was running their social media, so that my background is mostly just social media, but no business at all.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so the obvious question, how do people make a living?
Yeah. It's been such like a roller coaster with the industry, but I'm very thankful that brands are putting lots of their dollars into social media influencers, and you can make money off ads on your website. So there's definitely a variety of streams of income, which is great. I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of have that mindset, multiple streams of income. So the easiest way that you can make money is through ads on your website. So the more people that visit your website, the more you can make off of your ads. And then partnering with amazing brands. So some of our current partners are Silk Almond Milk, Larissa's Kitchen, Michelob Ultra, the beer.
Hey!
Yep. And so they partner with social influencers to sort of spread the word through product placement.
Yeah.
And then there's affiliate marketing as well, and freelance, and there's lots of ways.
That's really interesting. It's a world that I didn't really know anything about until a handful of years ago, and maybe it was just, I guess, cropping up a bit more a handful of years ago. But it's incredible the number of people who are building really interesting businesses because there's this niche there that, you can be a connector for people and brands. I think that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about who comes to you, who's your typical audience type person? What are they looking for?
Yep. So we definitely have a niche community. Our audience is mostly millennial female. So ages 24 to 34, might skew a little bit older. Like I said, females, and then all of these women have an interest in wellness.
Got it. Interesting. And do you hear from them at all in terms of what they love about the site, what they're getting from it? I mean, what types of things do you hear from the people you talk to?
It's really cool because Instagram has sort of evolved to be this platform where I can talk directly to our audience. So there's now a chat feature, so direct messaging, there's Instagram stories, and so it's really cool to be able to actually talk basically face-to-face with our audience. And so they mostly come to us for healthy recipes. We're all about balance, so we don't eat any certain way, but we believe in whole foods and then also treating yourself to really good brownies or beer. So they love our recipes. They come for workout inspiration, travel inspiration. Maybe they want to learn about houseplants if I'm talking about that on Instagram stories. So we're an all-around lifestyle content blog.
There's something interesting when I've spoken with folks in your industry. I've had a few people on the podcast in your industry, and I feel like this industry is almost dichotomous. There's the side of the industry that is all about, that views exercise as punishment. So, there's running t-shirts. I used to be I call myself a reformed marathoner, even though I still love distance running at heart, but I just like other things as well and, don't have enough time to spend on it. So I call myself a reformed marathoner. But, there's these t-shirts that are like, my sport is your sport's punishment. And there's all these things about punishing yourself with exercise. And then on the food side, if you do eat something that is a little bit indulgent, we use words like indulgent. Right. And we say, I've been so bad, and look at how bad this was. And I need to, there's this deprivation idea.
Right.
How I don't get that feel from you at all with the way that you're describing your brand and what you're there for. How do you see those two sides of the industry?
Yeah, I think that mindset shift was a big part of my recovery, because like you said about the good and the bad, or the yes no lists, or not getting your workout in is bad. And I think that is sort of what made me spiral, is having those thoughts. And it's taken me a really long time, and it's been a challenge to shift my mindset into treating, exercise as something that's really good for your body. But if it's going to stress me out, then that's also not good for my body. And the same thing with food. I truly believe in eating all things. Eat what makes you feel good, eat socially. Obviously, I do know that I feel better when I'm eating fruits and veggies and lean proteins, but I love ice cream and I love dessert, and that makes me feel good too. So I just truly believe in, living a balanced lifestyle, and that means something different to everyone. But for me, it's not obsessing over it. It's doing what makes me feel the best.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a message that's becoming a little bit more prevalent now too. I mean, you do still see that nasty side of the industry. And, unfortunately, social media is such like a great, but also really difficult thing, right?
It is.
I mean, you see the side of the industry where people are so perfect, and there's a lot of that discussion about punishment and deprivation and that side of it. But then you also see the other side of the industry. And, we were chatting a little bit before we hopped on and started recording about, how open and vulnerable you've been on social media. How was that a decision that you made? Was that a conscious, intentional decision, or was that just a natural thing for you?
I think it's just who I am in real life, and bringing that online has been really special because I can reach so many more people than in person. And I think social media has been a game changer for me, at least, especially with live features and Instagram stories, which is basically live. It was definitely a hard thing to do. I remember writing my first ever post about my eating disorder probably 4 years ago, and I had it in my draft for over a year.
Wow.
And then once I started talking about it more, that's, I think, when my recovery just sped up so fast. And so now it's just a part of who I am, and, I'm not sad or sorry about it. And I know that I've helped so many other people that are going through something similar. So it's been great for me to talk about it.
Yeah, it's so common. There was another woman who I interviewed. She does a lot within health and well-being. Her name's Jenny Evans. And she had this amazing quote that when we are vulnerable and open about ourselves, we give other people permission to do the same thing with themselves, like with their own story and their own struggles. Have you found that with people who have reached out to you?
Oh, yeah. I can't even count on 2 hands with all my toes the amount of emails that start off with, I've never shared this with anyone else, but here's my story. So it just gives them that open door to, start talking about it and understanding maybe what they're going through, and that they're not alone, because everybody's going through something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so hard to remember sometimes, especially, when you see people in your position who are really well known online, who have a large following. It can be hard to, I guess, keep that perspective around this person has a backstory and this person has their own real life that is messy and that has its own complexities, and you have your own struggles and challenges that you're going through. Yep. But it's difficult for people to keep that in mind sometimes.
It is.
Online.
It feels like the online space is all about comparison. It's, I spoke at the University of Minnesota this week, and I asked them, how long does it take you to post an Instagram? Because Instagram used to be you took the photo in the Instagram app and then you posted it. And today there's filters and there's scheduling tools, and, you can have more characters and there's video. So it's just, it's a curated life online, basically.
Yeah. What did you hear from them? How long does it take them to post?
They all agreed that it takes them they critically think about what they're going to write and what the photo looks like and all of that. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was so easy back in the day when we were just here's a picture of my dog. No filter. Wasn't even a hashtag, or we didn't even have hashtags. But yeah. Oh my gosh. So as you're in this position now, and you're looking back over this journey that you've had, what are some of the biggest things that you've learned? I mean, maybe it's about you, maybe it's about just business in general or the industry. I don't know. I mean, really broadly defined.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is how to run a business, and that no business is the same. I'm actually glad I didn't go to school for entrepreneurship or business, because I feel like to actually run a business, you have to just jump in and figure it out. It was really cool that my industry is so new, because we're sort of paving the way for what's to come. So it's not like I could ask somebody how to do something if Facebook had just released a tool or something like that. So it's been, I think, the most difficult but satisfying part of what I do is learning how to run a business, from the finance part, negotiating with brands, to how the hell do I work a website? I mean, I don't know. So I learned all that,
How did that not freak you out? I mean, that stops people in their tracks. Like that, I want to do this thing, but I don't know how to make a website, so I can't. Or I want to, whatever, but I don't know how to.
Oh, yeah. I designed all of my first logos and stuff, and I look back and I just can't even believe. I remember we've been going through all of our old posts, and I named a post Oats and Hose, and I was talking about oatmeal. I'm like, so I've always been really quirky, and I don't know. That's the best part, is I feel like I can go back to 8 years and just read about what I did 8 years ago.
Is all that still up on your site?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I bet that is this crazy time capsule. I want to go back to something you said about just jumping in and figuring it out. A really common, psychotically common theme that I hear from people when I talk to them on the podcast is this idea that they just started. Mm-hmm. That it was as simple as that. And I've almost started joking with people that, if you're I don't know, in the top 50% of intelligence, so half of people even, probably even broader than that, the biggest difference between people who are achieving amazing big things and doing these really crazy big things and people who aren't is that the people who are doing that started. Mm-hmm. Literally, it just seems like that's the case. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that was the case with you?
For sure. I always knew I wanted to do something different. And it was no question. My sister one day was like, you should start a blog. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I did it and never looked back, just because the challenges have been amazing. And I genuinely can't sleep at night because I'm excited to wake up to work.
Oh,
I know.
If people who are listening to this, I'm sure you're feeling exactly the same way about your job. That's amazing. And there's been a number of things that I've shared on past episodes of the podcast, but one of the things that I've shared is my, really strong passion and my really strong focus on the fact that, this is a bit profound. So, whatever, if you're driving, hold on to your steering wheel. But really this idea that we get really one shot at life and that we're going to be here one time and that there's something special about this experience that we have. And when you really let that sink in and when you really think about that notion, the things that you choose to spend your time on become really important. And one of those really big things is our job and our career. And we give so much time and so much energy to this job and this career that I think it's amazing when I get to meet people who are absolutely thrilled about what they're doing because it is such a big chunk of our life. So I think it's amazing that you're just so excited about it.
It is. It's been, and I think it's what makes it more amazing is the team that I work with because they make my job what it is.
Yeah.
So Lindley and Emily are my two best friends, and there's nothing better than working with women that are fun, are beyond intelligent, and we can just conquer the world. We really have the power to build whatever we want, to make as much money as we want, to change the world.
I love it. And the thing is, I can feel that you 100% believe that. You're not just, for just context for folks who are listening to this, we're actually like sitting in a room across the table from one another. And I mean, you're not just feeding me a line with that. Like you guys actually really believe this about yourselves. And I think it's just such an important thing. People don't realize how much power they have. They don't realize how much control they have. And they don't realize how many decisions they make, whether they're conscious or not conscious. Yep. You make decisions dozens of times a day that really, nudge you in one direction or the other. And when you vehemently believe something and know that you're meant for something really big, it's almost like it creates this vacuum in your life. Like there's a huge thing here that I'm supposed to fill this big void with. And I just feel like that is what's happening with you.
And it's cool because I feel like we don't necessarily know how to do it and we're not perfect. So it's all about like trying something, and if it doesn't work, try something different. Emily just started with us 3 weeks ago, and her job was amazing. She was the director of strategy at an agency here in Minneapolis, and she had amazing benefits. She got paid really well. She had a ton of time off, but she needed something more. And I am so thrilled to just be with her every single day and hear her say, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I'm so happy, she has control over her time, and the work that we do is just so meaningful to all of our passions, I guess. So that's just been like really cool to watch somebody else have the feelings that I'm feeling every day.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice do you have for people who maybe have this inkling in their mind that they might be, destined for something greater, or there's maybe a person, they don't believe it yet, but there's a person in their life who's saying, like your sister, you should start a blog. You should really be talking about this. Somebody who just has that beginning spark that there might be something there. What's your advice for them?
I honestly, what I say to people is you have one life to live. And I think that, I don't know, you just have to do it. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have to be vulnerable. You're not going to know every answer, but that's the beauty of this world, is that there's millions of people that are smarter than you or have different, they know different things than you. So it's like pulling all of those people together and just, using them as your sounding board and just going for it. Because you can always go back to your 9 to 5. Your resume doesn't erase.
I love that so much. It's funny because I talk to people about entrepreneurship in exactly the same way. There's 2 things that I say about it. Number 1, I say it's more stable than you think it is, because I had a normal career for quite a while. The number of layoffs that I went through, either I was impacted by them or people around me who were crazy intelligent, hardworking, valuable assets to the company were impacted by them. That happens out of the blue.
It does.
And, you get to create money and value out of nothing. And when you realize that that's something that you can do, you realize how much more stability there actually is than you thought there was going to be.
For sure.
So I definitely tell people that about it. And then 2, this idea of sort of the world is your oyster. So nobody's telling you. This can be scary too. And I'm curious about how you've thought about it. But I remember there's a point, maybe a year into me leaving a normal job, where I was like, okay, nobody's like setting my goals for me, and nobody's telling me what this quarter is supposed to look like, or what are our plans for this coming fiscal year, or anything like that. This is 100% up to me. And for a while that scared the crap out of me. And then something happened and a switch flipped, and I realized how much opportunity there was. And so the podcast started, and my website started, and some of these other things that you get to just sort of make little bets here and there and try. Did you go through that same sort of
I did. I feel like when it was like the moment I quit my full-time job, they let me go down to project-based, which was really cool. So when I first started running Fit Foodie Finds full-time, I had like 12 other part-time jobs, because, you have to figure it out. And I was like 23, which is very young. But I feel like when one door closes, a bajillion open, because you see things that you never would have seen with like your blinders on.
Yes.
So that, I think for sure, I don't even remember your question, but
yeah, no, I love it.
Just having a little bit of faith and allowing yourself to take that risk.
Yeah, there's actually a psychological principle there that I talk about a lot in episodes where our minds are really good at looking for something. Mm-hmm. They're not really good at looking at something. Mm-hmm. So really, and this is like the weird reptilian part of your brain. This is like the old, like Cro-Magnon, caveman, drag a club around part of your brain. But it is so incredibly adaptive, and it's really good at goal seeking. So if you give it a target to go after, it sees it in the world and it finds it in the world. This is why gratitude journals work. If you start telling your brain, I'm looking for things to be grateful for, it will find them. If you start telling your brain, I'm an entrepreneur, and that means that I need opportunities, and I need you to open doors for me, and I need to find people who have skills, and I need to find tools that will allow me to do these things, it will find them for you. And on the flip side, if you feed it with negativity and you give it the goal to find that, it's going to find that too. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to hear you say, this door closed and a million of them opened, because it's true. Your brain is just hardwired. It just adapted to be that way. And that's how we've survived for this long. That's why vision boards work. You put something on there and it's crazy how it happens. It's because you gave your brain a goal and it just started working in your favor. Yeah. And I think that's so cool. Yeah. So I asked you about your advice for somebody who wants to start a business like this. What about your advice for somebody who maybe struggles in the fitness and wellness and really, it's your core audience. What's your advice for people who struggle in that domain, because you have so much, valuable knowledge there?
Yeah, I think we all struggle because we compare ourselves to everyone else, and everyone is so unique in their own way and has their own journey. So you're not the same as anybody else. You're not going through the exact same thing as somebody else. Everyone's story is a little bit different, and that's, I think, the same thing with health and wellness. So you don't have to do the same workouts as the girl next to you, or don't eat kale. If you don't like kale, don't eat it. So I think it's finding what works for you. So maybe that's finding a workout buddy or going to workout classes instead of running on the treadmill by yourself, because that's what I used to do and it wasn't good for me.
Yeah. So, and it sounds like too, being really honest with yourself about what is and isn't working.
Yep. And finding a partner or friends who are like-minded. I think that's so important, to be on the same page as your significant other, and to surround yourself with people that will support you in what you're doing, because I've gone through that as well. So having opposite sort of health and wellness goals, I guess, is my significant other, and I think that definitely was a setback for me as well. And the second I met my new guy, Mark, we went to high school together. We didn't start dating till 2 years ago, but it just, just feels so right when you both like to do the same things and you care about the same things and you care about your body and life. I think it's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So. When you think ahead, aside from world domination, obviously that's what you're going to do, but what are some of your next goals? What do you want to tackle?
Yeah, so this year I think my biggest goal was to expand the team, and that happened last month, which is crazy. Yay! But I've gotten this question like 10 times in the last week, like, what's next for you? And I'm totally the person that like needs more and more and more and more and more. So I just keep telling myself that what's next is going to come to me, because you can't force it. We would love to do something brick and mortar. I'm not sure what that is. Our latest idea is a wellness bus, so turning like an old bus into, I'm obsessed with tiny houses. So making a business into like a tiny house on wheels. I don't know what it would be. But yeah, I want to stay as open as possible in my industry, because I think people get so comfortable with what they're doing and their streams of income, and I like want to be different and I want to, stand out and do more. But I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, and, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the best laid plans, like, you can plan all you want and you can try to figure out. But, you're probably similar. If you looked back 5 years, 10 years, would any of those plans that you had at the time have looked anything like your life right now?
No, definitely not.
And I think it's becoming more common and more acceptable for people to say, I don't know, I don't have a 5-year plan. Like, I legit don't ever either, because who knows? They never turn out.
And so
it's just
plan, and then it doesn't happen. So I'm
like, it's just a lot of time and energy to spend in like crafting this perfect plan that you're not going to end up doing anyway.
But I used to do it. I used to write out 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and now I'm like, I might be in Israel next month, or I might, get a random press trip to the Bahamas. I don't know. Things just, that's the best part of my job, is the flexibility. Because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Who or what inspires you the most?
I think like this women's rights movement. Just hearing so many different types of people, men and women, just coming together and saying that all are equal. I think that's been really cool, because it's awesome in my industry, because I don't feel the gender inequality thing, because my industry is all women. So for me, I feel like I'm already living and breathing what it should be like. So just hearing so many people of all ages and genders and ethnicities, standing up and saying like, this needs to change, I think is really, should have happened 50 years ago.
But you're right. So many people are getting involved that are people of different ages, and, men are getting involved, and it is just so much more of, it's a broader cultural thing, and it should be, because it impacts everybody, not just women.
It does.
Okay, Lee, that is all amazing and awesome, and so in line with exactly what we are about at the Women Inspired podcast, and I absolutely adore that you are here sharing your story, your business journey, your personal journey with us. It was wonderful. Before I let you go today, I have to ask you the final question that I ask every single person who is on the podcast. We are compiling a Spotify Power playlist of just motivational songs that keep people pumped up throughout the week. And I want to ask for your contribution to the playlist.
Hands down, Mr. Jones.
Oh, what? Where does that come from?
I'm just a 90s girl.
I love it.
It just like brings so much light to me every time I hear it.
I love it.
Get me on the karaoke stage.
Oh my God, I love it. It's not on there. Sometimes I get, the common songs are sort of repeated, but that one is not on there.
Add it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This has been so wonderful. I so appreciate you sharing your story, sharing the pieces of it that are a bit more vulnerable, and truly being out there on social media as a real, actual person, because we have enough examples of people who are so curated and polished that it really is refreshing to have people out there who are being exactly themselves. So I so appreciate you sharing your story with us and hanging out for a bit today.
Yeah, I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I really wish every single one of you could have been in the room with me to feel the energy that is coming off of this amazing woman. I'm so excited that I had the opportunity to introduce you to Lee Hersh. She is phenomenal. And I know after that, you are all going to want to know where to find her and go look at all of her amazing work. If you head over to fitfoodiefinds.com, you can get all of her content and her amazing recipes and just the amazing content that she's putting out there. And also, she is extremely active on Instagram. If you search for Fit Foodie Finds, you will also find her there. As always, I want to highlight a few things about our conversation, because there are so many that I could highlight, but there are just a few that I really want to call out before I close out this week. Number one, Lee talked about this idea that, her blog initially and this really movement that she's creating, she just jumped in and she figured it out. And how many times have we talked about that on the podcast? I almost feel like on one hand, it's getting crazy repetitive because so many people say that, right? I just jumped in and I just figured out how to take the first step and I figured out what to do from there. But on the other hand, I feel like it bears repeating over and over because it's so easy for us to look at somebody who is really successful and think that they have something that we don't. And ultimately, the difference between you and them is that they started and they just kept going and they figured it out along the way. You do not have to have every resource available to you. Lee had no idea how to build a website. Lee didn't know how to run a business, how to negotiate contracts. Some of those basic things that you need to know to be in the position that she's in today, she had to figure out along the way. And so some of it is like, well, I'll figure it out on a need to know basis, and I don't need to know it today to get started. So please keep that in mind. If there is a burning passion or something that is tapping you on the shoulder, take it seriously and just please, for me, figure out what that first step is and take it today. Second, I love the discussion that we got into about not having a 5-year plan. I feel like that that notion, like what's your 5-year plan, was a thing that people talked about quite a bit a while back. Like it was this thing that you were supposed to have. And I don't know about you, but honestly, think back to where you were 5 years ago. And did you really think at that point you would be in the position that you're in today? Because for me, that has never been the case, like ever. And so anytime I've spent any considerable amount of time thinking a year ahead, 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, heck, 6 months ahead, half the time, anytime I've spent a bunch of energy and thought on an exercise like that, it never turns out that way. So it's just wasted energy. I would rather spend it on something that I'm passionate about right now and moving the needle on that next step of the thing that's in front of my face right now than I am, going to spend it on planning for something that who knows if it will ever come true. And honestly, I'm betting that it probably won't. So really letting things unfold as they would naturally and being open to opportunities that come your way. I just really think that has served me so much better. It sounds like it's served Lee so much better. And it's something to try out, in your own life as you're pursuing things that you want to do. Third, oh my gosh, she is just a wonderful breath of fresh air online, that she is willing to be as open and vulnerable as she is. The fact that she shares her struggle with, anxiety and depression and eating disorder so broadly, it just makes you love her even more because she's a real person. I mean, like I said, I wish you all could have been here sitting across the table and just joining in on this awesome conversation that we had, because she is just a wonderful person. And I love that she is bringing her whole self online. And it's a challenge to all of us to do exactly that, to bring our whole selves online, because it's so easy to curate and it's so easy to really only put out there the perfect things in our life. And ultimately, we're all imperfect and we all have difficulties. So love that Lee is out there as her whole, vulnerable, real self. And last, oh my gosh, if there's one thing I am passionate about, I am passionate about the fact that we have one life to live. We are going to be here once. We get to have this experience of our one lifetime a single time. I devoted entire episodes to it at the beginning of the year. If you want, you can go back to listen to my first episodes of 2018. Beware, I swore a lot in them because I get really passionate about this topic. But I love that it came up in this conversation, and I love that Lee shares the same outlook because it's true. I mean, we have one shot here, and the way that we spend our time is incredibly important. Our job and our career is a big chunk of that, and it is so important that it's not something that we're white knuckling through. It shouldn't be something that is constantly taking from us. We have so much more power and so much more control than we ever give ourselves credit for, and it is so worth it for you to sit and think about what situation would fulfill you more, what would make you happier, what would give you more and give you a better life experience with this one shot that you have. Because honestly, that is all we are going to get. So I'm so thrilled to have introduced you guys to Lee Hersh, one of the amazing women who are members of Modern Well, this incredible co-working space in Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you are in this area and you are interested in checking out the space, I really, really hope you will reach out to me. I would love to bring you here as my guest and give you a tour. It's a wonderful place where you can meet incredibly inspiring and powerful women like Lee Hersh. I hope you have an amazing week. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.